11th, 2018 to order. We have a quorum and the agenda was properly posted.
Yes.
Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item 4 is public appearances, public's opportunity to speak about any subject that is not a specific agenda item. Nothing tonight. Great. Item 5, discuss and consider the minutes from the Plan Commission meeting of June 13, 2018. Any comments, corrections, additions?
I move approval of the minutes.
Second.
Motion by Fred, second by Don to approve the minutes as presented. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And I am abstaining. That's right, because you were, yeah. All right, item 6, discuss and consider approval of a site plan application from Reichert Builders to construct 2 4-unit multiplex buildings at 503 and 507 Progress Drive. You should have a couple of documents in your packet there. And I guess I'll let, is it person, are you here tonight, or is that you? If you could come up here, please. Feel free to use the easel, but that white thing is also a camera. If you put that white thing on the desk there, if you have a smaller document, it'll go up on those TVs.
I'm just, I'm
You
old
just got-
school, I brought the huge
Okay,
ones.
that's fine.
We had to help Ender find them.
You're lucky they're not on Stone's Goblins. Good evening, I'm Andrew Homburg. I'm serving for Jeff Reichert. This evening, he's out of town and couldn't make it. This is Mr. Ellery Jensen, the owner of the project. He's available to talk about things if you have any questions for him as well. We're pretty excited to be finally moving forward on a project here on these 2 lots in our first edition of South Lawn Estates. I recorded that plat back in 2001. So a mere 17 years later, here we stand. It's a really nice project that Ellery's going to build and retain ownership of. It's a pair of sister 4-unit buildings that sit adjacent to each other. If you're familiar with where AJ Regali's been doing his mini warehouse project, just to the east at the kind of the terminus of the west end of our business park, there's one vacant lot, lot 18, that sits there yet, then the overhead transmission wire, and then these 2 vacant lots, 157 and 158 out of South Lawn. And then there's the 4 existing duplexes as you come down the hill and go to Vilas Road. For lack of another easel, I'll prop this up. These are the building elevations. There's no way to really put it there. You know, from the beginning, Ellery and I discussed the concept of this project and how we were going to approach it. And we've applied the same standard here that I would apply in any of our high-end neighborhoods, including first edition to South Lawn Estates. And the architectural standards for the buildings are almost exactly the same as what I would see coming out of our 4+ projects up in West Lawn. A significant component of masonry, architectural grade shingles. He's doing upgraded siding, not just standard double 4 vinyls. We've put a lot of energy into working with the grade that's on the site. There's a lot of relief from high to low. And precisely, there's 20 feet from this pin to this pin. So one of the things that we've done, and you can see it in the elevations, is we put a break in the building. There's a 3-foot break from one side of the building to the next. And so what you'll see as you're coming on Progress is, you know, grade, building, break, break between the buildings, building, break, and then transitioning into the first of those existing duplexes. Ellery purposely from the beginning didn't want to put in phrase what I use, dense multifamily, for lack of a better term. These are 2-bedroom units, correct? And purposely designed as such so that it was hitting a different market. The existing duplexes are 4-bedroom structures per side, and we wanted to hit a different market segment in this neighborhood. If you go way back in time to 1999, 2000, and Phyllis, you probably remember this from when we platted South Lawn First Ave, the driver in terms of multifamily along this stretch was the rail corridor, and that's unchanged. You know, it's still a corridor that's utilized by Landmark and by Hydrite. It's not infrequent that you see rail cars lined up along this stretch. And I always try to apply the standard, okay, Andrew, would you live there in a single family home, you know, up against that corridor, or is there a different type of zoning that's appropriate? And that's why, you know, as you go back into the late 90s for the business park and for First Ave and South Lawn, you know, we were putting commercial zoning or multifamily zoning along that corridor. Concrete driveways, the landscaping plan is still in development. We'll be submitting that at a later date. We're hoping for a conditioned approval contingent upon that submittal to staff. The construction is, our desire is to get this moving as quickly as we can, frankly. The season's getting by us. I don't know how we got here, but we're, you know, middle of July and here we are. So we're hopeful that this is something positive and the village would embrace. And unless you can think of anything, Ellery, I think I'll be quiet.
Any comments, questions from plan members?
So it looks like there is, it shows 2 bedrooms and a study. We know that could be it. And the other one has 3 bed. Looks like the outer unit 4 on the plans we have shows 3 bedrooms and a study. So potentially it'd be 4 bedrooms. Not that it's a deal breaker, but just.
Is there any of these that have 3 bedrooms down there?
No, they're all 2 bedrooms with a loft, an office type deal.
Yeah.
They're about 1,500 and some square feet each.
It's 2 bedroom with a study. So, and it is sort of something that, second floor plan. Okay, in that end.
Looks like it's all bedroom,
We need bigger stone tablets.
Well, it says they're both bedroom 1, so.
What's that?
It says they're both bedroom 1.
Is that because of the loft then?
Well,
The little space that's labeled bedroom 1 in the front right corner is just a landing. That's not a bedroom. That's where you come down the corridor and turn the corner and head down the staircase.
okay.
So that's mislabeled.
Oh, because on the opposite one, it says hall.
Yeah,
I see it.
Spot.
yeah, that's architectural liberty.
Okay.
Well, I guess it's.
Good pickup, I never said that. And then, to address the study just head on, that is sort of, I don't want to say a game, but I guess that's something that people do, is that they identify a space as a study. It's small, it could be a study, it could be a, office, it could be a hobby space, and if someone wanted to throw a crib in there for a baby, they could, or a toddler, you could put a kid in there. It's a somewhat small space at 8 by 10, 10 by 10, and it lacks a closet. So, when you look at the hierarchy of rental rates in apartment buildings, it's not uncommon to see, efficiency, 1 bedroom with a study, 2 bedroom with a study, 3 bedroom, so on down the line.
Any other questions, comments?
My only other thing was that I think initially when that whole row was planned out, that you planned on that whole row to be 4 units. Even the duplexes were meant to be 4 unit lots when it was initially planned out.
Right, and good memory. If you go back a step from that even further, my preliminary plat called for 4 units, 6 4-unit lots along the rail corridor, and then I wanted to transition zoning and put duplex across the street, then the basins, the creek basin, and then the bulk of the 70 acres of First South. During the process of final plat approval, there were some folks on the village's side of the table that felt pretty strongly about changing that to single family, so we did. And I had some trepidation about doing that because, again, of the influence as we move from south to north. But, you know, we've kind of rang the bell. The housing that went up on the north side of Progress is beautiful. You know, those are very nice high-end homes, and it worked. I wouldn't normally want to jump from a 4-unit to a single family going across the center line of a road. That wouldn't be the way I'd transition, but in this circumstance, it worked out.
Any other comments, Aaron? Other than the landscaping plan, do we have everything that we need? Or?
I think the only other thing would be the site plan that's in the packet just shows the existing grade lines. We want something that shows the new final grade lines, and then any erosion control details that MSA would need. But I think we could approve it conditionally and just work that out with staff.
The other thing I wanted to mention, and we'll be working with Mike's office and Aaron's office to submit those things as we finalize them. And the grading plan will not change. It will just be a tweak. If this building shifts just a little bit to fit the building envelope, we might warp a couple of contours a few feet, but it's essentially what you see on this grading plan is by and large what we'll be doing. Ellery's willing to spend money to site these the correct way. It'd be real tempting to try to kind of shove it down, put them in a hole, save money on imported fill. I feel very strongly about the fact that it's difficult to set a building too high, but it's real easy to set it too low, and then you can't fix it. So we will have imported granular material that's coming in. I'm not talking about giant elevations, but just enough so we have forward pitch on those driveways and grade out to Progress with those drives. The other thing I wanted to mention that I forgot about, but I just wanted to throw out so that you guys were aware, is that this is being designed so that if in the future Ellery wanted to transition from a rental income property to these being ownership units, they're being set up with independent lateral sets, independent metering, so that it could be zero lot lined and sold off as an ownership project for occupancy rather than tenancy. Because he's taken a long-term approach on this. This is not about him building something to, show a great rate of return on an investment and flip it over and sell it. That's not the goal. It's either hold as an investment or potentially sell as individuals units.
Because of the grade, do you anticipate needing some retaining wall things in there? I mean, that's not a problem.
We absolutely do. On the site plan, you'll see there's retaining walls between the units. On the front, there's 3 walls, here, here, and here. And then likewise, on the back, there are walls that are helping bring that grade down.
Looks good to me. Any other comments? Anything else from engineering or staff on this, Aaron? Okay. All right.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
I live-
Second, can you identify yourself first?
My name is Jay Marhelli. I live at 508 Progress Drive.
Okay.
Jay, could you come up to the table?
Just because we're on TV
Yeah.
also.
Oh,
Okay.
I just have concerns about the properties that exist there currently and kind of the lack of following the neighborhood covenants as far as maintenance, lawn care, things of that nature, and wonder if there's any steps that would be put in place to ensure that they are taken care of and things of that nature.
Who owns the current properties, or is that?
Grosso.
That's gross, so that's a different owner, but I can tell you my experience with Andrew and Ellery has been a little bit better than Mr. Grosso.
Okay.
Well, just to try to address your issue, which is those are private deed restrictions that you're talking about, and so they have to be, what I suggest is that you get a copy of those, and then you'll find out if Mr. Grosso is still involved in that, or if an architectural committee has been set up separate from that, but the village doesn't really get involved in the enforcement of those kinds of things.
Well, we will get involved if there's a lawn issue. So if the lawn is too long, you contact our Public Works office, Public Works Director. He would go take a look at it. If it's outside the ordinance, then a notice would be sent to give the property owner an opportunity to take care of it. If they don't, then we would do it.
Okay. And then lawn and there's landscaping as well, where you have been there 6 years, and there's like weeds that have turned into trees growing 15 feet tall that have never been, monitored. So to me, that falls in within the village ordinance as well as the neighborhood covenants.
So we don't have a position that goes out looking for issues, so we are reactive in that sense. So if you give the Public Works Office a call, and I can step out and get you a card for that. And then we can check to make sure, things are outside of the ordinance, and we would address it.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, I'll make a motion to give conditional approval to this project contingent on getting the landscaping plan, and I think we talked about grade and erosion control. What we can get.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second to approve contingent upon landscaping plan, grade, and erosion control documentation. Any other discussion?
You want to add in their elevations too?
For elevation?
Yeah.
Okay. Second's okay with that?
Yes.
Elevation, okay. All right, if there's no other discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Good to see everyone again.
Yeah? Discuss and consider directing staff to draft a zoning ordinance amendment to create an accessory outdoor commercial entertainment land use. You have a document here in your packet. I'll let Lee and Aaron talk about that.
Well, since I haven't done anything on this, and this is Aaron's work, I'll defer to him.
Yeah, where this comes from, we've had a couple different inquiries over the past few years, but one additional one recently, someone wanting to do a bar, restaurant, volleyball type facility with some of the courts outdoors. The way our ordinance is written currently, we have a outdoor commercial entertainment land use, but that is really written for principal uses, and as examples, it uses things like amusement parks or racetracks, which I think is a scale above and beyond, a volleyball court or two. So what I'd recommend that we draft up and include in the ordinance is an accessory outdoor commercial entertainment land use for cases where there is a principal indoor use, like a restaurant or whatever, with some outdoor functions like volleyball or if there's an outdoor bar or something like that. This would be a conditional use with some regulations as described here in the report, keeping the activity areas at least 100 feet away from residentially zoned property, having some required buffering, blocking the views from residential properties, and requiring a permit for any kind of amplified.
Okay, like any alcohol within a confined fenced area kind of thing?
That's kind of covered by the alcohol permit anyway.
Okay.
Would be in the license, they would have to put
Okay.
their premise.
Okay. All right. And is this something that also has to go to village board then?
Yeah, so approving this wouldn't approve the ordinance. You'd basically be directing me to officially draft this up. I don't know if you have any comments or changes to this. I can incorporate those, but we'd have to have a public hearing next time to make an
Sure.
actual zoning.
I guess you might want to look at time, you know what I mean, a cutoff time in the evening. I think, Bree Stevens has that, when things are supposed to shut down. And same thing with here, I would think you'd want some sort of time.
Yeah, and that can be one of the conditions that gets put on as a conditional use permit, because some uses, maybe that time would be a little more flexible than others.
Yeah, but it should be addressed in some way, shape, or form
Right, so the indoor could be open later, but the outdoor stuff would have to shut down.
at a certain time. Yeah.
Okay. Any other comments, questions?
Well, just the one comment I would make is, when I said I wasn't involved in this, Aaron and I work real well together, and I have a lot of faith in what he does, and so I didn't really see the need to put a lot of time into this until we got some direction. So I think it's well crafted, and it's a good idea.
Okay. I'm certainly fine with it. Anybody want to make a motion to direct staff to proceed with this?
I'll make a motion to direct staff to draft a zoning ordinance amendment to create an accessory outdoor commercial entertainment land use.
Second.
Okay, motion and a second. And that's to include the outdoor components with a time limit, you said?
Correct.
All right.
Doesn't it look like Andrew wanted to ask a question?
I was just curious, this is, I used to, we've talked about citing up on the.
Andrew?
Just to make it official.
Yep, sorry. I was just curious about the 100-foot separation from residential, because this is a use that we've been trying to cite in the village for a couple of years, and I had a phone conversation today about this, the same concept.
So in your case with the parcels on N, the only adjacent, you wouldn't have adjacent residential, the residential is across the street.
So
So you already
what's
have a 66-foot right of way, so you'd have to be set back that 34 feet basically to give you the 100 feet from the residential.
Okay, so setback, and I guess that's the one thing that occurred to me in listening to you discuss it, is maybe a distinction should be made between single-family residential and multifamily residential, because those are 4-unit tenancy buildings. They're, rent buildings. And I think I've got
Something
a
we could
set-
talk about, I guess, we had a,
Well, I've got a 70-foot right-of-way
yeah,
on North Windsor. But you know how it works when you're trying to site a project, every 10 feet counts. So I am just thinking about where that 30 begins. If it begins at the pins and then I have to have, nothing but turf for 30 feet, it starts to cut into it.
well, and that wouldn't be for the whole building, it would just be for the actual use.
So where the
So if the volleyball courts are on the highway N side, the building would still have the regular setback.
And if we buffered it using parking to the west
Yeah.
and volleyball to the east, then, okay. I just kind of wanted to understand it as I'm thinking about how hopefully we might move forward.
Yeah.
Thanks for the time.
And I think what Aaron was saying about the individual conditional uses, using that as the time to bring up the time restrictions is important, because if you put in the ordinance, because you're maybe concerned about an outdoor use beyond 10 o'clock, but then something like this ends up maybe abutting Highway N, north of the interstate where there isn't any housing in the Commerce Park, then, we can, as a case-by-case basis through the conditional use process, address that.
Okay.
All right. We have a motion then and a second to direct staff to draft a zoning ordinance amendment to create an accessory outdoor commercial entertainment land use ordinance. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes.
So that motion then was without the time.
With the time constraint for the outdoor activities. We didn't specify a time. No.
Well, he's got to bring it back anyway.
We're
Okay.
just directing them, we're directing them to
Yeah.
create the ordinance, so we're
So
gonna
I
get
think
another look at this.
any other things
We'll
that you
tweak
may
it.
want.
Okay. All right. Number 8, discuss and consider draft maps for the northern portion of the village for the comprehensive plan amendment. You'll see, I think, 5 different links here in your packet. I'll let Aaron talk about those.
Yeah, so I guess before we get into the maps, recall last time we were talking about some of the POCO responses we got and how we could potentially increase our response rate. I'm thinking maybe one of the issues is that those questions might have been just too complicated for POCO. I think people are kind of expecting to follow the link, read something for 5 seconds and say yes or no. These questions had a page of background information and lots of fairly complicated choices to answer with. But I do think those more complicated questions are important. Maybe a better way to do that is kind of a longer survey. People would know going in they're going to have to invest a little bit of time in it. It's not going to be a surprise to them. And they would only have to go there once. They're not constantly going to links every time you put a new question on. I guess the downside is we can't really follow up with new questions as easily as we could with POCO, but I think in terms of getting a stronger response, this might be the way to go. So if you're kind of on board with that, I can draft up a survey that we talk about at the next meeting.
Thoughts on that? I mean, that sounds like a good idea. Park, Lycan property, and what's the bottom one?
Yeah, so these are the different sub-areas within the northern part of the village. What you're looking at here are basically the existing condition maps that'll be part of the comp plan ultimately. It's basically just looking for any comments you might have on any of these, and then just to start talking a little bit about the issues and opportunities that are present in any of these sub-areas. And I kind of jotted out a few, but I'd be interested in any other comments you have, either on the issues or the maps. So starting with the Beacon area, which is basically where the new TID 10 is going. Yeah, I think some of the opportunities there are obviously the linkage to the interstate, the visibility, the newly created TID that's going to be open, for 20 years now. And the way that using that TID can allow us to make some of the utility and roadway improvements that we would need up there for further development. I guess one issue that's outstanding yet is getting that area in the urban service area. But we certainly have plans to do that within our next budget, if not sooner. Another opportunity up there is that it's, for such a vast amount of land, it's really within just the hands of a few landowners, so it's not like someone would have to deal with 20 different landowners to put together a
Does the
piece of-
Beacon property actually include the gas station then, or is that?
No.
Okay, I was looking at,
And I think that's something I will add to each of these sub-area maps is the boundaries of the district we're
Okay.
talking about, just to make it a little bit easier and more obvious.
The gas station's actually in the town of Sun Prairie.
that's what I thought, okay.
As you can see on the water resources map, there's a pretty significant, boundary to the north as far as floodplains and wetlands and things like that. It does ultimately limit how far we can go up in that direction. There's kind of a natural boundary enclosing this area. So if there were any other potential issues or other opportunities that we would want to list in the plan that could drive land use decisions in the future. Otherwise, or any thoughts on the maps, otherwise we can keep going forward. Jim owns land up there. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
I guess if you could come up.
Sorry, I wish I could point to the spot on the map. I don't have that, but so we own it's the sort of southern little corner. It's 15 acres just south of the Beacon property.
Okay.
And so that is currently residential or rural holding. And so our intention, and I came about a year ago, so I don't know if anybody remembers. So my wife and I, let's see if I can get oriented. I think it's, I'm going to guess it's right about there, that little piece there. I'm going to guess this chunk here. Does that look right, Aaron?
Yes.
So it's 15 acres out of what, 240 some odd acres that are now in TID 10. And so my wife owns a business. She helps seniors downsize, move from bigger houses into smaller houses. We'd like to relocate our business into that property. Part of that need is also personal storage units. We'd like to develop some storage units that would be available not only to her clients but also to the general public. And we think that there might be some opportunities for some functional rental shop areas where different business owners can have their own business within a shop, so a rental space. Something like a large storage unit, and I think, Don, I believe you have some of those in your property, so something along those lines. And then I do think at some point, probably a distribution center or two comes into play. But so we do have some plans. We've divided up into 5 different phases. We're working on all the different topographies and the site plans, and I'll bring those, I believe, in about 2 months. But that is our current plan for those 15 acres. So.
Thank you. Any other comments on these maps? Otherwise, I'm fine with what we've we've got here, I guess, if somebody wants to make a motion to approve.
We can go through some of the other
Yeah.
areas here. McCarthy County Park is identified as a sub-area. They have their own master plan that they did for the park that was approved just a couple years ago. We'll reference that and describe it within the comp plan. The Commerce Park, which includes not only the current park, but also the Blackhawk Airport and some of the properties on the other side of N. I think probably the biggest issue in that area would be that, we're kind of running out of years left in the TID. It's going to expire in 2026. I think some of the opportunities, there is positive momentum. Obviously, the Summit building is very visible. Another opportunity, we do still have a variety of lot sizes remaining down to about 2-acre parcels within the Commerce Park, but also a 19-acre parcel across the street, and then the airport, if somebody wanted to do something with that, is quite a bit larger even. I think the covenants have done a good job of keeping the architectural quality high, especially as it's visible from N and from the freeway. And that is kind of a gateway location. If there's any other issues, opportunities you can think of for that area, or any comments on the maps for that one?
Looks good.
Yes, if not, the next sub-area would be the Oaks, which is the Oaks Golf Course and some of the residential subdivision around there. It's within our planning area, it's within our extraterritorial jurisdiction. It's not an area I think will be growing within the horizon of our plan update. You'd have to run a pretty long pipe to get to any undeveloped area over there. So basically, I think what the comp plan is going to say, we recognize that area is there. We probably don't really expect it to change within the planning horizon. It's going to stay in the town as a real subdivision.
And then the Blue Fields, I guess.
And it's a somewhat similar story with the Torbleau and LaRue areas. Torbleau, the eastern part of it is largely existing subdivisions. I think we have to I think we do have to be somewhat cognizant that they're there and how we buffer any development within the Beacon area. It will be important in the future, but again, this is an area that's in the town and probably will stay in the town of Sun Prairie. And again, to get to the undeveloped areas to the west, it's a lot of pipe we're running over there to, that can't service anything, between here and there. LaRue Fields also largely platted out. There are still a few vacant parcels within the little business park that's there, but not too many. So those are the sub-areas within the northern section. Moving forward, we could kind of take these maps and then the issues and opportunities to kind of feed into doing a land use map. We'll also do a similar exercise to this with the central and then the southern band of sub-areas as well in the coming months. So with all that and the survey, I think we'll be generating the information we need to do land use plans for each sub-area and then get those before the public and get comments on those.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on any of these draft maps? I mean, I think they're pretty nice. I'll make a motion to approve the draft maps for the northern portion of the village for the comprehensive plan amendment.
Second.
Okay, motion and second to approve. Any other discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion passes. Item 9, update on Community Development Authority's discussions regarding the creation of a new tax increment financing TIF districts.
Pretty simply, the Joint Review Board met earlier at 5 o'clock this evening, and all 3 of the proposed districts were approved. Don was our chairman on that committee. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Nope, everything was basically, they did add a little bit of funding for admin, but everything was as we had seen it. Nothing changed as far as any boundaries or anything else. And then we did see a review of existing 3 TIF districts that we have, and one will most likely be absorbing and closing. And then the other, the Commerce Park one's doing really well. And, so yeah, we just had a review of them as well. So.
Thank you. Comments from commission members? Anything else, Don?
I talked to Matt and Mike earlier. It's not necessarily planning, but it kind of is, especially on new developments, is to take a lesson from what happened last night at Sun Prairie, as far as looking at, not only do we have hydrite here, do we have to worry about any kind of potential emergency, but also gas shutoffs were a big issue in Sun Prairie. So as we currently, let's figure out where we have our shutoffs, work with Alliant, work with our public works people, our fire department and whatnot. I talked to Mike and Matt, like I said, to find out, to make sure that everyone, all the players involved in any kind of incident would have good mapping, not only just for evacuation and whatnot, but just try to make a lesson out of what happened there, and try to help us, or for us to be proactive, so that if something like that would happen, and Mike indicated there's a potential for some utility fiber work to be done in the village, which may invite something like that to potentially happen, that we already have mapping in place. We got utility, our utility supplier and everything. We've already thought about it, and talked about it, not, let's try to do it ahead of time, not, at the time of an incident or after the fact.
When something is built, everybody knows where the shutouts are, but 20 years later, where are the maps and who knows where all this stuff is? And,
right.
Yeah.
Don, along those lines, I'm not sure how it's going to be received, but I was tasked with looking at emergency government, the setup. And I think that we have to really take a hard look at whether it makes sense to have a joint emergency government setup or not, because right now it's set up where the chairman of it goes 1 year it's the village, 1 year it's the town. So I guess I have my questions as to whether people at the village, if a town official would come over and go, well, okay, I'm your leader, here you go, you do this, chief, you do that. And it just kind of seems to ignore the whole chain of command idea. And I know Melissa's new to that, so she gets to jump right into the fray. But if you read that ordinance, it's, we either have to really do some work on that ordinance, or we need to look at whether the joint idea works or not. And I have my questions as to if something, and actually just what you talked about jumped to mind to just say, well, okay, now what happens in a situation like this? And it's nothing against the town, it's nothing, it's just, it's got nothing to do with the town-village issue. It's just more of, okay, if something like that would happen, would we traditionally be looking at Matt and Jack to be the ones who are in charge of our people or our resources and assets?
Well, JJ.
Or the chief of police is the first contact.
Right,
or something.
and if you go back to the Moffett report, that was one of the things that they suggested. I mean, they reacted, I'm not sure how that got in there, but maybe we asked them to do it, but it provides a good background information. So that's something I've been working on, and I think that the next joint emergency meeting is right at the beginning of August. So if you don't see me again, that might be why.
Okay. But Matt touched on that with me too. He brought that up to me,
Yeah.
and it goes both ways. Matt gave an example what if you have a village person in charge and it's something in a remote area of the township that
Right.
we know absolutely nothing about? So that, it's not, you know, it's for them as well it is for us to.
It's not, and it's not meant to create a controversy, it's meant
No.
to solve issues, and I think that we should take a real hard look at that.
And like Matt indicated, it's, we already have in place sharing resources, and it's not that we're not gonna help them out, because we certainly are, we're neighbors, you know, but it makes sense to what we're all, yeah.
And again, conceptually, it seems like a good idea, and when you're doing the, what do they call those things, those practice tabletop things, you know, it doesn't seem to be a big issue. But I would have my doubts if the same thing that happened in Sun Prairie happens. I mean, then the response is real critical, I think. So.
That's all I have.
All right. Kyle, welcome back.
Thank you, no.
Phyllis?
I just wanted to thank Aaron for all of your work on the comp plan. Looks like you're moving right along, so that's great.
More to do, Steve.
I will not be at the next meeting. I'm on vacation.
All right. I have nothing else. Lee? anything?
No.
Matt?
No.
Aaron?
No road work.
All right. Next meeting, let's see, you're looking at August
8th.
August 8th at 6:30. Okay. All right, any future agenda items? You can think of just.
Working on the comp plan, we'll come back with this ordinance. There's a few other projects floating around that,
So eventually the comp plan will be an electronic document we all have access to
yeah,
at some point, okay?
that we're just kind of working on one piece at a time.
All right, perfect.
Motion to adjourn.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Motion second to adjourn, non-debatable, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned, thank you.